What's happening?
Just enjoying life, snow, kids at
Your
home,
snow day.
all the things.
I love it.
No, I'm excited to get in this conversation.
We're doing it.
And I have an epic question for you yet again this week.
Okay.
So my question this week is, what is one thing that frustrates you the most that if you had a magic wand, you would solve it today? What's the thing that frustrates you the most that you want to solve in this world? It can be anything.
In this world.
In this world. In your life, in this world, you get to pick it.
As you know, I'm frustrated by a lot of things. This is this is hard to nail down. It's hard, like I'm trying to think at scale and what would be the thing that I would solve. I mean, the thing that comes to mind, and I don't know, I would probably need some time to like digest what I could do for the world. But the thing that I am consistently frustrated by, and I genuinely wish that I could solve, is people's, I'm not sure how I want to say this. I'm having trouble finding the words, but it's people stop short of their full potential. One of the things that really frustrates me and not frustrates like I'm mad at them, but in the sense that I am frustrated when I recognize that people aren't willing or able to commit fully to themselves. When there's excuses, when there's perceived barriers, when there's an inability to recognize opportunities, that really frustrates me. And I feel like, or I know that I have been consistently in situations, partly because of what I've chosen to do for work, that I feel like I'm constantly in a place where I can see it more clearly than the other people. And if I could just help them see what I see and how clear the road like is and could be. And, there's just so like literally every day where I'm like, this is it. Like I can see it so clearly for the other person, and not that this is unfounded, but they're scared, or they let excuses get in the way, or again, they come up with perceived roadblocks as a way to tell themselves that they can't do it, or they shouldn't do it, or it's not the right time. And then this is like in all aspects of life. I'm talking about for your health, for your family, for relationships, for business, I get very frustrated. And again, not mad at them, but frustrated because I feel like I can recognize what it can look like on the other side of that perceived roadblock, or that inability to make a decision, or that feeling of scarcity. And I wish I could change that. That's my answer.
And that is a great answer. And that, my friends, is why I've chose to be in business with Sir Taylor Thomas. That gift right there. Yeah, it's funny because I didn't know what your answer was going to be necessarily. I know you pretty well, but I didn't know what you were going to talk about. But that leads us directly into talking about what we're talking about today. And, I say this a lot, that like you will find what you focus on, and what you focus on, you will find. And I think a lot of times we can focus on the frustration and we can get really bogged down by the things that frustrate us. But what we don't understand, and I don't think either of us understood this until we started doing the work that we do, and started unpacking it for ourselves. But your frustration is actually your calling, and your purpose, and what brings you the most joy also when you get to solve those things, right? And so when we get to step into solving those things, that's where we get meaning in our work. And so there's something that I love about focus, like not focusing on the frustration, but allowing the frustrations in our life to speak to us and to be the awareness. I know we've talked a lot about this, but I always think or say to myself when I'm in those moments where I'm frustrated that like the tension in our life gets our attention to look at something bigger. If we didn't have any tension in our life, we would never stop and like look at something bigger. And we just stay stuck in the same freaking place because it's comfortable. But if there's the right amount of tension, it will get our attention because it'll be uncomfortable enough for us to go, this isn't working anymore. And so if you're finding yourself in a place that you are frustrated and you have tension in your life, it's trying to get you to look at something bigger. And if you continue to focus on the frustration, you will continue to find that same frustration. But if you shift your focus and you allow that tension to speak to you and you get into it and you look at it from a different perspective and you think about what you want, just like Taylor did, that's where life happens. That's where we get to solve problems, change industries, and enjoy the work we're doing. So that's what we're talking about today. I would say I'm super passionate about this, and I know you are too, because we do want people to live up to their full potential. Like, if people aren't living to their full potential, then like, what's the point, right? Like, I think that's where humanity comes alive, is challenging ourselves to push past the limits. So what does that look like for you? Like, you're a pro at this, and that's exactly why we've joined paths, because you do that and you challenge yourself to live to your full potential every single day. I see it, our team sees it, our clients see it. You've ran the races, you've done the things, you've started the business. Like, when it gets hard, how do you focus on the right thing? And how do you realign that focus?
Yeah, thinking about the tension piece you were talking about, I think it's interesting in kind of turning a critical eye towards how we think about that and the role that tension plays. And it hit me that when you were talking about that we often take that as a cue to turn the other way, right? We're like, okay, this thing, I'm getting pushback. This is a negative. That must be a sign to do something else. And of course, there are things that you shouldn't pursue, right? Like, and I think that really is the interesting, there is a juggle there, right? Or a balance that friction and tension for the sake of friction and tension isn't a good thing. There are things you shouldn't do. You should listen and pay attention, and it might not be a good opportunity. But then there's also a time when we need to lean into that. And to your question, I've just always, it's always made a lot of sense to me that the amount of work required to do the things that I want to do is over and above my current capacity. Meaning that, like, my expectations out of the gate are that I'm going to have to do more and be more and think differently and to get to where I want to go. Otherwise, I'm going to be at the level I'm at, right? Like, what I have done and who I am and the skills that I have gotten me to this place right now. And if that's where I want to stay, then that could be fine. But if I recognize that that's not where I want to stay, then I make peace with, or have made peace with, the again, like the effort and discomfort required to get to a new place. And that doesn't mean that I'm absolved of the feelings of that discomfort. It doesn't feel more comfortable for me. I don't navigate it necessarily any better, but it is, I think, an alignment of expectations. And I think that's what I really try to focus on, is even when I have really shitty days, I do know for a fact that it is necessary to be pushed in that way, to be uncomfortable, to be frustrated, to feel, all the things. You can feel inadequate. You could feel anxiety. I can have all of those things, and they're very real. And also recognize that's just part of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is really a big piece of people turning away from their full potential, is that like expectation alignment, right? To from the start recognize that to be someone that we are not right now, we're going to have to experience things that we're not used to experiencing. And there's going to be parts of that in a very real way that are uncomfortable and really challenging and potentially hurtful. And like, again, like the range of emotions, like the human experience is still very much there. Mm-hmm. But I think the alignment of how we categorize those experiences is really important. Like it's when I do a really, if I'm going to do a really hard race or a very long thing, I don't think for a second that thing's going to be easy. And I don't even think that the more that I train for that thing, that it's going to get easy, right? Like you train for the hard thing so that you can do the hard thing, not so that it's easy. And I think about business that way a lot, right? Like I do business, I do the hard things, not because it gets easier, but for the fact that to be able to be capable of doing it.
That's so freaking good.
Yeah. I don't know actually that I'd thought about that like unconsciously. I think I definitely knew that, but I kind of just drew that parallel in real time. I was like, oh, that's really I think that's the piece that I always come back to, is like, oh, I recognize the goal is not for it to be easier, it's to endure and to be able to like in ultra distance events, anything, strength training, any of the stuff I've put my body through, the goal is that I can withstand it, that I can endure it, not that it's easy and not that it's less hard. It's to survive it. And I think that there's a lot of that in our life, right? Where you're like, the goal is to be able to weather the storm and to then have that experience be meaningful enough and leave its mark on you so that you're a different person on the other side of it in a good way. But sometimes life roughs you up too, right? Like I don't expect to finish a 100-mile, endurance running race and not be pretty roughed up, but I endured it. And that was always the point, and I learned a lot through it.
That's really good. Like, I don't know I've ever thought about it that way. And it is interesting thinking about that. Just from like the perspective of like, we'll go to exercise. But I think sometimes even myself, I'm like, oh, that actually like is a good shift for me. Like, I think sometimes I get frustrated because working out in this season of my life, or fitness in this season of my life, feels so different than when I really saw myself and like was living in an athletic, or like the lifestyle of an athlete, right? Like there was a time that like I really was a competitive athlete, and it feels so like hard and far away to think about that. And I think that I tell myself sometimes, like, oh, if I just do more of this, it'll be easier. Or even in leadership, like if I just do more hard conversations, it's going to be easier. Like if I just get to this point, it's going to be easier. And it actually isn't. Like that is such a key. It's you do it to do the hard thing, to like accomplish the thing that you really care about. And we talk a lot about that with difficult conversations. It's like I guess we don't do it necessarily because I want it to get easier. We do it because it's good for us and we get like a really great result on the other side of having that difficult conversation. And you don't necessarily work out because you want it to get easier. You do it because you want the fit lifestyle, or you want whatever result you're going after. And I think a lot of times we do interact in things or continue to move forward because we're focusing on it being easier versus that like amazing result we're going to get on the other side. And I think that's even for me, I'm like, that's such a shift in mindset. Because I think there is like easy for some reason is sexy, right? Like we've just glorified easy in this culture and fast. And those are never the things. Like if it's easy and fast, it's cheap. Nobody's like shows up at an event is like, I got this on Shein. Like, it's not like, unless you're like obsessive with saving money, but like nobody feels good about doing the cheap and easy thing, right? Like you show up and you're like, this is a handmade bag. This is like, there's things in this life that are valuable because they're not easy and cheap. And most things are valuable when they're not easy and cheap. When somebody has put a lot of time and effort and care into something is when it becomes valuable. And I think we're missing that in our businesses. We're missing that in our relationships. And even in relationship, I think that's a big one, right? Like it's really easy to focus on all the things that we're doing wrong. Like as someone who has been married a long time, and I'm sure you can contest to this, or been in business a while and like has had a lot of hard seasons, it's super easy to focus on all the things that are going wrong. But what's hard is when we experience those disappointments to get back up and look at the vision and look at the person that like we remember 15 years ago or 17 years ago and go, I just still choose to love you. I still choose to like call you to the best version of yourself. Or the teammates like showing up like shit. And you're like, I actually hired an amazing person. And I get that you're not showing up like that, but I'm going to choose to focus on your best potential, your fullest potential, and not continue to align with this like shitty version of yourself. And I think in leadership specifically, or relationship, I mean, really in anything, it's so easy to show up and just affirm the thing that we don't want and the thing that we're finding. But for me, the fear of disappointment and calling someone into that full potential and the best version and hanging on to that vision is painful and scary when we've experienced disappointment. And so I think a lot of times, I'm speaking for myself, I choose to look at the shit that's not working because focusing on the vision and what could be is fucking painful. Like it's scary. I'm like, I've already given a lot of time and heartache to this thing. And sometimes I don't feel like giving it any more energy because I just feel like I'm going to be disappointed again. And so, Taylor, like for you, how have you continued to show up when you have had disappointments and like losses and you're like, I'm just tired. Like, I don't want to look at the vision anymore because I'm disappointed because I'm not there yet. Like, I think that's where I get worn down is I'm like, I'm a visionary. I can like taste it. I can like see it. I know that I know what I want. And I think sometimes the challenge can be getting clear on that. So I think that's the first step. But like when you're clear on the vision and you can like smell it, taste it, see it, how do you keep going when like you get smacked in the face and you're like, I don't know, I believe that it's possible anymore. Like, I don't want to focus on the vision because it's painful.
It's a good question. I mean, the truth of the matter is that some days it's really hard, and I think, we've talked about that before, on this podcast is there are days where that doesn't feel particularly easy, and we were talking about this idea that it doesn't, or this belief that the intention is not that it gets easier, but that we become more equipped, and I there's because of the world that I, come from on the cycling side, there's a famous cyclist. His name is Greg LeMond. He has a famous quote that says, "It doesn't get easier. You just get faster." And, it kind of captures that, but it's a bit of a mantra that, I kind of repeat because to your question, I guess that for me, it is that recognition. Again, there's an expectation alignment, daily, really, that like the goal is not that it's easier. The goal that it is that I'm more equipped, right? Like I'm going to put in the same effort no matter what, because I've committed to myself and I'm committed to the people around me that I feel an immense sense of responsibility for. And I do know that effort actually yields more results as time goes on, right? Like like to Greg's quote, right? It doesn't get easier, but I get faster, right? So the same effort actually yields more results. And I know that if I just show up and I focus on, I really try to focus on what I can do today. I think that is one of the things with vision that can be really overwhelming, is that it's really far away. Like if you're really striving, it's not close. It's going to take more effort and cost you more than you ever thought possible and that you ever imagined. And it's going to punch you in the face more than you thought you could put up with. And so I try to focus on, what can I do today? All I can control is how I show up right now. And I heard a quote one time, was like, just do one more, right? And this idea of like, instead of focusing on the path to your vision, and that's, thousands and thousands of repetitions of the thing that you have to do, focus on one more phone call, one more podcast, one more, do the thing that's right in front of you and make sure that that's in alignment, and then do it again. Right. And that to me feels much more obtainable. I'm like, okay, I don't know how I'm going to get to the vision, to the thing that's, even maybe 5 years away. I do, like, tactically, like I understand, I have the roadmap, I can build out the processes, but what I do know is how I can show up tomorrow. I know what I can do today. I know what my skills are. I know what my strengths are. I know who I can talk to or who I need to try to talk to, or I know what skills I don't have and where I need to bolster those things. And so for me, it's that like distillation of the process. And, all I can focus on today is what I call my non-negotiables, which every day I want to do great work. I want to move my body, and I want to spend time with people I care about. I'm going to do those three things every single day. And eventually I know that the sum total of that effort is meaningful, right? Like you can't put in that much work consistently and it not yield results, right? Like if you go to the gym and even if you do a shitty workout every day, but you do it every day, you'll be fit, right? There's no great, perfect workout. If you walk every day, but you do it every day, you'll be really fit. If you do push-ups every day, one day of push-ups doesn't do anything. If you do them every day, you'll be jacked, right? Like it's the sum total of the effort. Like it's the only thing that matters is the compounding effects of consistency. And that's what I focus on. I'm like, all I can do is this every single day in alignment with the things I know they're important. And I'm going to focus on that, and we're going to have moments where we zoom out and make sure that's connected to the vision. I don't want to do those things in the wrong direction. But for me, yeah, I'm just like, okay, this is today. Let me just do that, and that feels very like, I find a lot of that feels very like cathartic for me in the sense that I just trust this process enough, and I know that I can trust myself, and I'm just like, okay, rinse and repeat, right?
Mm.
I like the like chop wood carry water mentality, right? You heard of that, right? It's like these are the things you have to do every day, right? Chop wood, carry water. It's not sexy, but you got to
Mhm.
chop wood and you got to carry water. You know what you do when you wake up tomorrow morning? Chop wood and carry water. Rinse and repeat. I don't know. That puts my mind at ease. I'm like, okay, I'm
Mr.
gonna focus on that.
kind of vibe. Remember Karate Kid?
Yeah. No, I love that. Like, I think that we and I that there's a million different ways for people to stay engaged in the process, and I do believe like whatever works for each individual. But I also think that there is a function or a piece of that's become kind of conflated and overcomplicated, right? Where we try to make it more sexy than it really is, and we're looking for like the easy and the cheap, like you were saying. And I just think it ultimately, like, the things that matter aren't easy and cheap, and they take a hell of a lot longer and a lot more effort than we might imagine. So just settle in, right?
Mhm.
Like, the only thing that moves the needle that I've ever seen in this world is compounded consistency over much longer periods of time than we care to admit, right? Like, you're not going to get abs in 60 days, but you might get abs in, 6 months. You might get, right? Like, whatever the thing is, um, just settle in, like, focus on what you can control, and make sure it's meaningful day in and day out.
I think that's important to always consider. It's just focusing on what you actually can control. And I think so many times in leadership and within our businesses and within, like, we can look at the last 5 years and be like, there was a lot of variables that we cannot control. There is a lot. And the reality is there's a lot we can still control, and we can still do good work, and if you have those non-negotiables, you get to enjoy the process. And I think for me, like, just it's kind of the same concept, like being grateful and like really prioritizing, um like appreciating the process or the small things in the process. Is we're planning travel, and like the reality is I get to travel for work, and like I get to like take my family with me, and that's been a goal for a long time. Honestly, I was getting really frustrated because we had to like plan the travel out the other day. Like, we're like teaching our boys how to do that, and we're like in the trenches with it. And I was like, I hate all of this. Like, I just want $1 million today to be able to like just buy the first class tickets and like not think about it, right? And the reality is you still have to think about it. Like, there really is no easy button, and it's fine. Like, it would take just as much to figure it out, and like we still like did all the things we wanted to do. But there's this idea that like at the finish line, whatever imaginary finish line that like I am focusing on, and it is important to focus on the vision and like the final result of what you want. But it's also important to focus on like what we appreciate today. Like you're saying, like, just focus on the few things or the things that you can control today. And my husband said to me, these are great problems to have. The fact that you're mad about planning a trip with your family is ridiculous. You need to be more appreciative. And I was like, shit, you're freaking right. Like, it was kind of this like moment of like, you're like, you're mad about the things you wanted. Like, why? And I think sometimes we just complicate it too, right? Like, we just get so obsessed about the next thing or the best thing or the easiest thing or whatever it is, and we just don't enjoy the process when like really we have access to enjoyment right now. We don't even need to go anywhere or change anything. We just need to shift our mindset a little bit, appreciate what we have, because 10 years ago you might be really proud of where you're at today. And I find that that's true a lot of times. If we just stopped and we're appreciative and proud of ourselves of what we built today, if we put ourselves in our shoes of 10 years ago, we would be really proud. And that's something that I've been thinking a lot about. Like, 10 years ago, I was fighting for my life. And today I'm bitching about planning a trip with my family. And like, that kind of like smacked me in the face because my husband brought it up. And I was like, wow, that's so true. Like, I was just literally praying for tomorrow. Like, I just was hoping to make it to see my kids graduate and those things. And like, why don't we just choose to enjoy the process? Why don't we just like choose to get clear on the things that we can control and choose to enjoy the process? Because joy is a choice, right? Happiness, I think, in a lot of ways is a choice. I think so many times we just complicate it versus enjoying our teams, enjoying the work we're doing. Is it perfect? No. But I don't think when we reach whatever imaginary finish line or the fullness of our vision, which I'm going to say you can't fully, like, you'll never fully get there because it should always continue to grow. If we are not enjoying it now, we're not going to enjoy more. You know what I mean? Like, it's a choice. And so I don't know. I just want to encourage anyone who's listening to like stop and figure out what you can enjoy today. Because if you don't enjoy it today, you're not going to enjoy it in 10 years or when you reach the finish line, or really at any point, because you will be living in a pattern of not enjoying the things in front of you. And so I'm just like, oh, that's what I'm more committed to, is just enjoying the hard. Like, choose your hard, baby. Get in, settle in, choose your hard. Because it's hard to like sit on the couch and be fat. It's also hard to go to the gym. Like, both are uncomfortable for different reasons. Hard to be broke. It's also hard to get up at 4 a.m. and like start work. So choose your hard and like settle in and enjoy the freaking process. And I think that's, I'm telling myself that. I think it's hard to like be in that, even when things are good or they're not. We just complicate it, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it you have to, again, it's expectation setting. Like, you have to decide ahead of time how you're gonna weather the storm, because it's not if it's coming, but when. And I again, the storm comes when you push on your boundaries, and the storm comes if you sit still, right? It's a different kind of storm, but it's coming regardless. I believe that if you're going to sit in the storm, it might as well be in the direction of your full potential. But that's everyone's decision to make. But I think, outlining the value of that process ahead of time, and what that actually means when it does get challenging, and what it means when you have the wins. I mean, there's plenty of bright spots every single day. I think a lot of those bright spots are easier to see when you've aligned your expectations and you know what those non-negotiables are, and you choose to focus on the things you can control, and you have a clear vision. So, that feels like a strong like mic drop. You just you brought it home. Good for you. As always, impactinitiative.network. If you need support, if you are looking for ways to align, if you're struggling to see the forest for the trees, if the sum total of your effort doesn't feel like it's adding up to what you want, if you're not clear on your vision, your values, your non-negotiables, we are here to support you. So impactinitiative.network, you can reach out to us there. We would love to connect with you. We always are offering a free consultation for anyone that's interested in learning more about what we do and how we help you get aligned and enjoy the process and actually see the forest for the trees. So thanks as always for listening, and we'll see you next time on Impact Minded.